Okay, everybody, I see we're still having some people log in. We've got probably about two-thirds of our attendees logged in so far. So I'm going to go ahead and start with kind of our opening and our welcome. And if you have questions as we go along, your chat section here is going to be the best place to submit those questions. So let me go ahead and get us started. Okay, so those of you who don't know me, my name is Lacey and I am kind of emceeing today. So I'm going to be with you through the whole day today. So we're going to end up hearing from a lot of really wonderful business and marketing folks today, as all of you know who have registered. And our goal for the day is to provide a space where we can collaborate, where we can learn, where we can lean on each other as we all prepare to come out the other side of this this challenging time that we're facing stronger. Okay. So a few short weeks ago, we decided as a group of quite a few Pacific Northwest marketing and advertising agencies and freelancers that we wanted to put on an event that would empower people to better navigate the world during and after the virus's impact. So that is why we are all here together today. Okay, a lot of work has gone into this in only just a short few weeks, and so I hope that you really love it. We're a little nervous, we're a little excited. Maybe you're nervous, maybe you're excited, I don't know, but we are a little bit. Maybe I'm the only one, I don't know. Because honestly, I'm used to hosting video chats, hosting webinars, or like in-person fundraisers and galas, but I've never had to host like a live conference like this where there's more than about 50 people in attendance, but no way to hear like whether or not anybody likes my jokes, or if they are inspired by the speakers, or like if they like my jokes, you know? So maybe I spent like, when I get nervous, what I do is I procrastinate. I think maybe I'm the only person that does that. So what I chose to do last night to procrastinate was I went on and I thought, I'm going to find an applause app, right? Because like we need to know if the jokes are funny, and we need to know if you're inspired by the speakers. So I found a couple different applause apps. Okay, they all suck, first of all. So if there's any developers in the room right now, come up with a new applause app. There's space for you in the market, okay? This is the one I found though, this little one that looks like this. And so maybe when we transition from speaker to speaker, maybe I'll use the applause app. Look, it has a little one like this. Yes, that's a really nice, polite clap. Or like a really excited one is like this. Okay, so like I might use that when we transition to speakers. I might forget to do it. Unfortunately, I can't do it when I do my own jokes because that would probably just be inappropriate. So if you like my jokes, I would love it if you would just put some clap emojis into the chat section so that I have a little feedback to know that you are enjoying what we're doing, okay? I'm getting I'm getting some clap emojis. Good, thank you. Thank you. I'm sweating, but we're here together, okay? This brings me to some of the housekeeping items that I need to go over for the day, okay? So let's talk about agenda and logistics. So the workshop, thank you for the clap emojis coming through. It's really helping. It's helping my situation here. The workshop is split into 3 sections. Okay, so in each section, we will have a main speaker and then a panel discussion. So the speakers and the panelists for each section will have their video and audio enabled, so you'll be able to see and hear them. And then the rest of the attendees, you'll only be able to interact through the chat and the Q&A functions. So at any time during the speaker presentations or the panel discussions, if you have feedback, you want to offer praise, you think something is interesting, you want to share something, that kind of content belongs in the chat section, okay? If you have specific questions that you would like to have answered, that content goes in the Q&A section. So if you look down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there is a small menu. There is one for chat where you should be chatting with each other. And if you click Q&A, you can add questions into the Q&A section. So let's see. Each section The speaker will speak for about 15 minutes. And then I will introduce the panelists, and then the panelists will start discussing for about 45 minutes or so. So I have some prepared questions that came through registration, and I'll be posing those to the group. And then also any questions that you all have. Thank you. Lindsay is giving directions on how to use emojis in your chat section here. So listen to Lindsay. She's got the information. So we'll have the panelists talking. If you have questions through the panelists discussions, you can enter those into the Q&A section, and I will be monitoring that and be posing those questions to the panel as well. Okay, so section 1 is going to cover the topic of perspective. It will go for just over an hour, okay? And then we'll have a 5-minute bio break, okay? Do you know what a bio break is? Liquid comes in, liquid goes out, okay? I don't know if I should say that, but it's the truth. We need a break for it, okay? I need a break for it. So we will have a 5-minute break between session 1 and session 2. Session 2 will cover the topic of connection. And at the end of section 2, at about 12:30, we're actually going to break for 30 minutes, okay? And that 30-minute break is a lunch break, okay? I can be seen sprinting from here to Compass Coffee and maybe Big Town Hero to pick up something in that 30-minute function, in that 30-minute time. So I don't know, if you're watching Google Maps, you might see me sprinting over there during that 30 minutes. The last section, we will start back up at 1 o'clock, bring on our last speaker and our last group of panelists, and we'll be covering the topic of opportunity. We will aim for closing today's event at 3 p.m., okay? Good, that's all the real agenda stuff, okay? I'm done with that stuff. So we can move on to some funner stuff. So our main sponsors for today's event are Gravitate, IMS Capital, IMS Capital Management, WSU Vancouver, and Camus Life Magazine. There's also a large number of marketing and advertising agencies and freelancers that I spoke about at the beginning who have put lots and lots of hours of in-kind work into this, and you'll see their logos scrolling through during our bio breaks and our lunch break. I also want to mention here our community partners. So all of the proceeds and the sponsorships that came through for this event are being donated back to the community. And we chose 3 local nonprofits to partner with. The 3 nonprofits that we chose are Columbia River Economic Development Council. I feel like that's a good time for my clap. Don't you think? See, it doesn't even work. Where's my developers? Oh, wait. It's user error. My volume was turned down. Okay, so Columbia River Economic Development Council, the Foundation for Vancouver Public Schools, yes, polite clap for them, and Family Meal, okay? Yes, polite clap for them as well. Okay, so those are our sponsors. Or I talked about our sponsors, I talked about the nonprofits that we're donating to. So now I'm going to give Jeremy an opportunity. Jeremy was on screen earlier. He's kind of doing all of the technical stuff today. He's responsible for making sure the video comes up properly and everybody gets, I'll get to it, Alicia. I'll get to the code of conduct. It's in here too. But I want to do it after. Do I? No, fine. I'll follow. Alicia's in charge, okay? If you see her in the chat section, girl is in charge, all right? So direct any real questions about technical things to Alicia today. Code of conduct. We have a code of conduct on the website. If you go to tableagencygroup.com, you can see the code of conduct, but basically what it says is like, don't harass anybody, okay? Nothing harassing, nothing abusive. Obviously, you're allowed to have an opinion, and maybe if your opinion is different than a panelist or speaker, you're of course welcome to put that into our chat section. But anything that is trying to, Kendall just said, is it cutting out for anyone else or just me? So if anybody else is having it cut out a little bit, let me know and I'll see what I can do. Don says it sounds okay to him, but anybody else, let me know. So code of conduct, basically, don't be a jerk, okay? If you start harassing, if you start doing anything that is abusive or harassing in the chat section and trying to disturb the event today, we will remove you from the Zoom room. Okay, so don't be a jerk. All right, that's it. So now I want to bring Jeremy on. Jeremy is the president of TAG, which is the organization, the group of marketing and advertising agencies that I spoke about. So Jeremy, can you come on and give just a little introduction about what TAG is for us, please? We'll see. And I should clap for him. Everybody, for Jeremy.
Thank you, everyone. No, but seriously, thank you everybody for being here. It's really awesome to kick off kind of our first table agency group event with an event like this. It involved a collaboration from all the different folks in TAG, and it's been an awesome event, awesome process to get to this point. So thank you all for being here. I know you're going to get a lot out of it. I just want to tell you a little bit about what TAG is and how we operate a little bit. So TAG it's not a company, it's not an agency, it's more of just an idea. It's a group of agencies. TAG stands for Table Agency Group. It's a group of agencies that have come together that share resources, share processes, inspire each other, and work together to take on projects that smaller agencies and freelancers couldn't take on their own. So that was kind of the vision for that. Don Elliott, Matt Cole, and myself started talking about probably over 3 years ago now. And it's been awesome to gather folks together. We've done some great projects together. And what's cool about it for our clients is that it allows us to build a team that's custom to the project's needs. So instead of hiring an agency that has all of these things built in, you hire a specific set of practitioners that are experts in their fields. And if you need a videographer and a copywriter and a developer and a designer for your project, we've got that. And if you just need a designer and a developer, then we can just shrink that down to accommodate whatever your project is. So that's kind of the real strength of how we operate. And the other thing is that everybody who's working on the project is an owner. There's, for the most part, there's that owner mentality behind every aspect of it. So my company is Endeavor. We do web development. And so that part of the project I take really seriously because that's my reputation. And the design aspect is that designer's reputation. So you have an owner that's taking on that aspect of the project. And not only are they really good at what they do, they take it really seriously because it's their livelihood on the line. It's not just an employee doing it. So that's what our vision for TAG is. As we've come together, as Lacey mentioned, so much time, so much volunteer time is represented in what we have here today, and so much great expertise. I know you're going to love it. And so with that, I'll hand it back to Lacey.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you so much. Okay, so that's like all of the intro discussion that we needed to get through, okay? I feel like we've accomplished a lot already, and it's only 9:15. So quick quiz time, okay? Section 1 covers what topic? Anybody? Let's see, first person to answer in the chat section. What topic are we covering in section 1? Perspective. Beautiful. Annie wins that. She's on the panel, so, I don't know. It's kind of cheating, but at least somebody got it right. So section 1 is all about perspective. And like I mentioned, each section is going to open with a 15 to 20 minute speaker, and then we will move on to our panelists. So the speaker for section 1 is Don Elliott. I'm going to go ahead and read his bio here for you as Jeremy gets him prepped and ready to start his opening talk. So Don Elliott is a business owner, most recently of Gravitate here in Vancouver, Washington. He's also owned various marketing and creative agencies for 20 plus years. He brings a unique vantage point across dozens of industries and companies of all sizes. He's been described as, and I like this, equal parts creative brainstormer and professional problem solver. So, whether he's consulting for another agency, at a board meeting for the Cascade Forest Conservancy, that's a hard word to say. Am I saying it right? Conservancy? I think so. He likes to approach a project from all angles to ensure thoughtful, cohesive marketing solutions. Okay, so let's bring him to the floor. That seems like it's a good time for applause too, don't you think? Like, welcome, Dawn. See, the app sucks sometimes. Look, I'm pushing the button. Developers, there's a space for you here. Okay, Dawn, you all ready? You feel set? You ready?
I am ready.
Okay.
Is my video on right now?
Well, it was for a second.
Try this.
There we go.
Oh, no. All right.
You're good now.
I had technical difficulties, so I was going to be back here, but instead you just get my grill all up in your face. So I've been working on this, but I can't see up close how it is. So don't judge me, just listen.
It looks great. Your facial hair looks great.
Thanks. So yeah, this is weird for me too. I've never done anything quite like this. I'm also used to standing up, so I feel like I just want to move around. But I haven't bothered with pants for a while, so I didn't want to break my routine. So thanks, Lacey. Yeah, my name's Don Elliott. I'm the owner of Gravitate, and actually, I just bought Gravitate right in time for COVID. So, in fact, a little history. My previous agency, which was bought by Gravitate, I started in 2008, May, so just in time for the Great Recession. If we go back even further, my very first agency, I started with a couple partners in Portland, and we did that just after 9/11. So I don't know what that says about my luck, but I do know, or have experienced quite a few financial crises right at the beginning of businesses. So this one, as soon as I saw what was happening and had just come into the company, I thought, okay, well, what did I do in the past? What worked in the past? Now let's start there. So the first thing I did is I took full inventory of all my resources. So, and I don't just mean like financial assets. I mean my team, my network, any skills I could find, both for myself and other people, partners, anything I could find. And what I did was I quickly found myself at TAG because that's my first group of people to go to. And we sat down and over Zoom to talk about what we were struggling with and to see how we could help each other out. And very quickly, consensus was formed. And basically what it was is us saying, everybody's saying we're in this together. That's great that we're all kind of commiserating in the muck, but what good does that do if we're not rising up together? Hence the name. So we decided, let's bring all of our resources to the table for each other. So we started looking at things like sharing resources all the way to the point of sharing employees. Anything we can do to keep employees on the roster and to keep us moving together as a coalition, a group of people. One of the things that we talked about was competition. So we do have direct competitors in TAG that work together. It's kind of strange. It's a really cool model. And we thought, this thing that we're doing is really what being in it together means, but we're isolated. We're siloing ourselves. And so what we realized, there was something that kind of rose to the top of the conversation. And that was that, yes, we're in the mud with everyone else. We're dealing with PPP stuff. Believe me, I'm dealing with PPP stuff. Cash flow, keeping employees, keeping clients paying, the same problems as everyone else. But we have, as marketing and creative agencies, we have a particularly unique vantage point because we are seeing businesses across all industries, all different sizes of businesses. Gravitate alone, we manage a little more than 600 clients at any given point. And when this started happening, phone calls started coming in, emails started coming in, because basically what we were seeing was that companies would see this is happening. We would think, we don't know how long this is going to happen. We don't know how bad it's going to happen. So the first thing is we reach out to our finance people and we say, what the hell is going on? And what the hell do we do? And then the next people they call is their marketing team. their advertising team, and they say the same thing. What the hell do I do? And how the hell do I do it? But this was different for us, different than any other, for me, definitely different than any other crisis I had navigated a business through, because we found ourselves not having the answers, which was a strange position for us to be in. Yes, we know certain things. So what I'm saying is that these tried and true marketing efforts that have been true, as recently as 3 months ago, and have been working for years and years, there's a certain portion of marketing that applies almost to any company. If you're B2B, this certain formula works, 60, 70% of it is roughly the same. The actual execution varies a ton from client to client. But when we're looking at ad buys and social media and these other things, the underlying core journeys, so to speak, were roughly the same. But now all of that has been thrown out the window. These things that we knew worked before, that we could vouch for, that we could guarantee, we couldn't guarantee anymore. We know this little thing in this little specific instance works. And we know that this company over here did this and this works. And we can push these together and we can test them and hope. But the thing is, we don't have time. We have to survive, right? There's companies that have already closed down. There's companies that are closing down. We had a client who laid off 98% of their employees and shut down all but one of their locations. They had, I can't remember, it was 8 or something across several different states. We got a lot of calls like that. But the thing is, we're not just talking about surviving at this point. And I think that's part of where this conversation is going, is we're worried, a lot of us, about the next day, the next week. But the thing is, this is entirely new. We know the world's changed. We've all been saying it, but none of us really know how. We don't know what'll be different. We know some things are different right now. But what we're seeing is that, or the way I see it, I should say, is we have these old roads that worked really well. And they've become forked and fragmented. What used to work, now all of a sudden there's 3 or 4 ways, and we don't know if any of them work. For some people, the roads have just completely vanished. For some industries, we have no idea what we're going to do now, and things are completely changed. The travel industry, for example, will probably never be quite the same. They have to be a lot more creative in what they do, just as an example. So if these paths are vanishing and becoming convoluted and unclear, they're dark, how do we know how to move forward when every person has to make their own path now? So that's the problem we were looking to solve. We needed to be able to be there for our clients, and we thought, we need to extend this conversation that we're having internally out to everyone else as well, because we're talking about finding these paths. What we're talking about is finding the patterns and identifying those patterns and moving forward. Now, when digital advertising was first introduced back in the day, those methods started being tested then. And years and years and years later, we now have this understanding. Well, we're back at that first point now. And we don't have years and years to figure this out. So we have to come together to collect larger sets of data, monitor more effectively, and share that information so that we can start finding these paths together more quickly and get into whatever this new norm is, get there faster. One of the things that I've said quite a bit recently is that, folks will come to us and think, we're problem solvers, right, at the core. And so that's part of what clients are coming to us for. And they'll think the first thing you need to do is research, observation, collect the data. The truth is, there's actually a step before that that's often really overlooked. And that is that we have to accept that the problem's there in the first place, and we have to define it. We have to dig into the problem, understand it, accept it, and then from there, we can start finding those new patterns. We can start writing our own rules, developing new ideas, put them out there, all that kind of stuff. But like I said, the world is on fire right now. We don't have time for all this testing and endless cycles of revisions. So for me, in the creative industry, when we go about solving a problem, we have to deal with fear. and how to overcome fear and look at the issues as opposed to hunkering down. So for me, since we don't have time for all this testing and everything like that, and because the world's on fire, this actually feels a lot more like improv to me. I actually used to run a sketch improv theater back in the late 90s. Thankfully, none of that is on YouTube because you wouldn't respect me anymore. But it was fun. The thing about improv is that no matter where you or your character, where you want them to go in the story, you have to accept the truth and the reality of any other element introduced by anyone else on the cast. So my character may want to get to the library to meet the love of my life, but Annie's character just announced there's a tiger in the room. So a poor improv actor will respond by saying something like, the tiger is unreal, or it was a dream, or they just lied, so they can move on with their story to get to the library and the love of their life. When that happens, improv is stopped in its tracks. The energy is lost. The rhythm is lost. The actors are now trying to figure out what's happening instead of rolling together. The vibe is lost. And frankly, nothing's really that funny at that point. Meanwhile, a good improv actor accepts that the tiger is there and allows their character to focus on that problem and admit the tiger's there and then adjust their path. So the character still wants to get to the library and find the love of their life, but there's a tiger in the room now. So, oh my God, there's a tiger in the room. Well, thankfully, I'm He-Man. So all I need is this sword. I can hop on the tiger, it'll turn green, and I can run into the library together. Now the love of my life is going to be really impressed. So here I accepted the problem. I moved. I didn't have time to test the theory and run out there and see, what if I do this with the tiger? No, that didn't work. The audience didn't laugh. Let me go back. What if I do this? No, roll with it. And that requires, I almost skipped this part, and I think this is actually important. It's the situation we're in right now. Basically, the script has been thrown out the window, okay? We're all actors on the stage, but this is the time for sharing those stories. Like I said, finding those new paths, building a stronger future together. When this dialogue continues beyond this conversation that we're having today and it spreads and this mentality of sharing, catches on, over time, we're bringing more light to the problem, and together we find that solution. We're talking about fearless innovation at the end of the day here. In the creative process, fear is the enemy. I'm a sci-fi nerd, so to quote good old Frank from Dune, fear is the mind killer. So that's what this first section is focused on. We're going to share some stories. We don't have the prescriptions. We can't tell you exactly what to do, but we can share these stories. We can talk about what has been working in other circumstances, and this will spur some ideas. This will get our creative juices flowing so we can start solving problems. And that's what I'm hoping to do here. We're going to have the panelists share some stories. I'm going to share a couple really quick here, and these are just snapshots of things that we're seeing out there to work that works. Start getting the fear of COVID out of your head. This conversation's not about financial survival this week. It's about what the next few weeks looks like. It's about what the next few months look like and what you look like moving forward. So we're talking about ideas and creativity and losing the fear. So with that, Lacey, do you want me to tell my stories and then you introduce the panel, or do you want to introduce the panel and I tell my stories?
Why don't we add your stories in along with the panel? So why don't we go ahead and bring the panel on, introduce them, and then we can start with the first story you'd like to share.
Perfect.
So Jeremy, if you want to let the rest of the panelists on have their video and mic turned on, I will go ahead and start introducing everybody in the first round of our panel. Okay? And I think he'll switch us to gallery view too, so that we can see everybody's tiles. Oh, everybody looks so good. You just had your video off and now look at you all. Okay, so while he's working through that, I am going to introduce everybody. So as I say your name and start introducing you, if you can give a nice little wave and say hello. So I'm going to start with Michelle. So Michelle, can you wave, say hi? Okay, so this is Michelle, and I'm going to read her bio real quick. So this is the funnest part, whenever you get to just read somebody's bio when they're standing right there. So we'll make it through together. Michelle owns Curios Consulting, and she knows that anyone successfully navigating a crisis like today's global pandemic needs to have strong leadership skills with clear communication, emotional intelligence, and an understanding of DEI. I'm excited to hear what that is. This is where Michelle comes in to help with coaching, workshops, and training. So that's Michelle. Okay, next person I want to introduce is Kelly on. Do we see Kelly here anywhere? Let's see. You can work on that. Oh, I see you're coming on. But Annie's here right away, so I'll come back to Kelly. Let's go to Annie. So let's give a little wave for Annie. Not Colton, you're not. No, I didn't mean wave at Annie. You're confusing people. Only Annie wave. There we go. Annie with the light bulb. Okay, Annie is the owner and principal for Vivid Reveal. She knows from overcoming personal struggles that resilience needs to be part of her strategy when crafting brand identities. Her commitment to creating safe spaces for all influences. Her commitment to creating safe spaces for all, there we go, influences how she helps brands be true to their values. Okay, so that's Annie who we have. I see Kelly did get on here, so Kelly, can you give them a wave? Colton, don't wave again so you confuse everyone. Kelly is the owner of CPA for Creatives. She understands the struggles of pivoting your business to digital. The CPA industry is generally old-fashioned, so the current crisis has really tested her on the ability to be resilient in such uncertain times. But she's continuing to find unique ways to support her clients in the creative field. Okay, so that's Kelly. Wonderful. Let's move on to Colton so he'll stop waving at everybody else's turn. Colton Tidwell is the CEO of Gravitate. He's been here before. He successfully led a 25-plus person company through the 2008 financial crisis without having to lay off any employees and found strategic ways to position themselves for future success. Ask him about his harrowing experience in Mexico. I want to know. Okay, so maybe we'll get to your Mexico experience here. Let's go to Adrienne. So Adrienne, I'm biased. She works at my company, so I love her the most. But Adrienne is the lead digital strategist at Spry. She has a master's in digital media and is the social media 101 professor at Seattle Pacific. Is that correct?
SPSCC.
SPSCC. As a 2009 college grad, Adrienne is no stranger to working through chaos. Her diverse range of industry experience, from winemaking to corporate marketing to snowboard instructor, which is one of her favorites, in combination with her SWOT analysis method and adaptable attitude, enables her to think outside the box for marketing solutions. Okay, so that's Adrienne. I've got, Aaron, are you my last one to introduce? Okay. So Aaron Lynch is the partner and creative director at Shop. During his career as a designer, writer, developer, and more, Aaron has seen major disruptions in the economy before, like the dot-com bust, 9/11, and the Great Recession. He knows perspective, patience, and a willingness to change are keys to long-term success. Okay. All right, that's everybody. And Alicia wrote all those bios, so thank you to Alicia. Those were put together really, really nicely. We're all grateful for that. Okay, so everybody on the panel, you can unmute yourself so that we can talk to each other freely. It sounds like Kelly says she can't unmute herself. So we've got Kelly, and then, good. Okay, we're all unmuted. So here's how we're going to work through this, okay? I am going to be posing questions. All the attendees, I would love for you to be commenting in the chat section as much as you can. It's so helpful for panelists to get just a tiny bit of feedback as they're talking. So anything in the chat section is great. And then if you have specific Q&A questions, you can put them in the Q&A, and I will get to those after we do kind of our first round of organic questions. Okay, is everybody ready? Does that sound okay with everybody? Okay. So we're going to start out. Dawn asked us all to kind of share a story of a client or an example that we've seen of people really doing a good job changing their perspective and starting to rise up through this situation. So Dawn, why don't you go ahead and do that and share your first story, okay?
Okay, great. So I think for the first one, I'll just talk about something we're working on right now, actually. I've got a few other ones that we can pepper in later from other industries that are kind of cool. But part of what we were looking at is how do we stay true to our brand and our vision and our mission and our commitment to our clients, but re-examine all of our offerings for this new time. So, for example, we're really big on, we have a wide range of things that we offer, but one of our flagship things is really high-end websites and e-commerce sites. Those take time because they require a lot of strategy and a lot of thinking through. We're not huge fans of moving really quickly, except for when there's a really good argument for it. Well, right now it's a really good argument for it. So we said we gotta reevaluate this. So we have two teams working on a product right now, where we are one of our folks. I think it might have even been Alan. I can't remember who it was. So sorry, whoever really came up with the idea. But how can we do a rapid launch e-commerce site? So for all these companies that have been meaning to go online and now find themselves going, oh, we should have done that. We need to move quick. How can we do that? And so we have two teams where one part of the team, it's one team, but one group of the team is how do we talk about this? How do we sell it? How do we package it? How do we explain the value there? And is there value? Let's make sure of that. The other team is figuring out how do we actually do it? What's our processes? What are our quality control mechanisms in place? What's the workflow happening simultaneously so that we can get this new product and offering out there as quickly as possible. And this is not something we would have considered doing before. It might be something that continues as an offering for us moving forward. So that's just digging deep.
Okay, wonderful. So let's move on to somebody else. Does anybody want to volunteer to go next, or I will volunteer you?
I'll go.
Okay, go ahead, Adrienne.
One example that I've noticed recently is, as I said before, or as you mentioned, Lacey, I used to work in the wine industry as a winemaker, but I've also just kind of kept tabs on the industry because, who doesn't love wine? But one thing that the wine industry is kind of known for is being very kind of old-fashioned and very mired in tradition, and labels have to look fancy, and there's kind of some snobbery around it. And so they've kind of been very slow to embrace new, fresh, fun things like social media. So something that I've been noticing lately that's awesome is that they are, a bunch of wineries that I follow are just embracing live videos. And right now is spring barrel tasting, which is kind of like a big time to release new products for them. And so winemaking is kind of tied into the tourism industry. And so now they're not able to have all these people come out and visit them. And so what they're doing is they're doing live tasting, live barrel tasting. They're going into the cellars and kind of just doing this live video on Facebook Live or Instagram Live, which they never would have done that a year ago. And what I love about it too is that it's not perfect. And I think that is the one thing that we really have to get used to, is that sometimes it's not going to be perfect, but do it, try it, and then move forward and try it again. So that's one example that I really am enjoying watching.
It's like forced innovation.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, sorry, you don't have a choice. You got to do it now. So
yeah,
I saw, I think it's Mondavi wine, I want to say, down in California. What they were experimenting with was doing live tastings, but they would people would pay ahead and they would actually ship the wine to them, and then it would be a small group in Zoom, and they'd make it educational, and people would chat what they thought. That's so cool.
Yeah, so it's so fun to watch.
Alicia commented, local shops are doing that too, like Hip Chicks in Southeast. So love to see that, something lots of people are doing. Michelle, can you go ahead with an example that you have?
Sure. I think that an example that I'd use would be myself. I think that's just the most tangible and and really elaborate example I could share that I hopefully will inspire others to kind of do some internal work as well. But I've been working on my side hustle, which was Curios. It was a side hustle for, I would say, about a year and a half, 2 years before I took the leap during COVID to make it my full-time gig. So I think for me, rising up, as everybody talked about, I think what kind of stood out is like Adrian mentioned taking opportunities to really do things, or a company took an opportunity that they maybe something they wouldn't really do, and tried to implement that into this new environment. And I think that obviously folks need to do that for their companies, but I think that something that needs to be discussed in this space of perspective is how you do that for yourself. I think that it's very easy to operate in ways in which we're used to. And unfortunately, we are in a space of kind of rapid shift and change and daily, Don, when he was sharing with us kind of in preparation for this conversation, it kind of shifted kind of throughout just because of the information that is literally new on a regular basis. And I think that what's coming up in terms of rising up for me is really how I kind of utilize the space of change to say, okay, well, I think I need to kind of shift as quickly as what's happening externally. I need to be able to really kind of go inward and take the pause necessary to really slow down, to speed up. And that sounds counterintuitive, but I think that slowing down for me just means kind of pausing at the space between the data and the action. Someone talked about data in the chat, and Don talked about it earlier as well. But our thoughts are really muddled right now. Mine were very kind of confused and kind of wrapped into balls, and it's difficult to navigate through the emotional triggers that might be coming up for us. And making decisions quickly right now is, to me, my perspective is that it's a bad idea. I think that I'm not saying inaction, because that's obviously not going to be helpful either, but really kind of analyzing that space between kind of the information you have and the action you want to have impact is really important. We're all feeling feelings of grief and fear, and your kids are home potentially, and you're pulling up with however many people at your house, and you're working from home, and you're on Zoom calls, and there's so much being thrown at us. So I think, to me, the rising up looks like pausing, which is really kind of difficult to do, and our inclination to just kind of jump in and do something different is definitely, I think, normal, but I think that it's potentially harmful. So I think that it would behoove us to kind of take a step back.
I love that. Nicholas in the chat section while you were talking there said, change at companies starts with change on the individual level. And I think there's some real wisdom. Point. I don't know. I'm not having any emotional reactions. My pants just don't fit now because I don't know why.
You. Not for the pants, for the emotions.
Yeah, it's all right. I can get new pants. Colton, do you have a story you'd like to share?
Sure, for sure. So as CEO of Gravitate, of course, I deal a lot with our staff. I deal a lot with our clients. And so early on, it was really important for me to understand not only what our clients were going through, but what our staff was going through too. And understanding, the feelings that they're going to have and continue to have, because this is, the unknown, as Don said, it changes every single day. And that's what we chose to form a perspective that we could control. And I think that's one thing that, really hit us really early on is, form a perspective that we can control. That doesn't feel like chaos. That doesn't feel like we're out of control. And it's something that we could work on what we knew. And that was, part of why we started rolling out other services and offerings. Another thing that we did quickly was started, buying meals from local restaurants and invited other companies to do that. And I know Intuitive Digital and a couple other Portland companies started doing that as well. It also inspired a company in Salt Lake City to continue catering meals for their employees for dinner. And once they exhausted, buying meals for, their employees for dinner, they chose to keep that catering company that they were working with going by donating those local meals to nonprofits and whatnot. So the relationship was really important for them. And that's the one thing that we can control in this is how we treat people, how we react to people, and who our customers are, what they're going through, and understanding where they're at right now and meeting them where they're at. Relationships, if they weren't important before COVID, they should 100% be important right now, moving forward, and understanding that relationship with your client base, with your customer, with your employees. That is one thing that you can control, and relationships will be top of funnel moving forward. So if I had any advice for any business or anybody listening, it would be, control the relationship that you have with your vendors, with your clients, with your staff, and continue to hit it hard by developing those strong relationships. Bedmart is a company that we work with who had to lay off a lot of their staff because of them having 38 locations between states. And one thing that they chose that they could control is how they react to the customers online. And so they hit it hard, and they're doing, that's one thing that they are doing well is really treating their customers that are online really well, and they're having success doing that. So I think moving forward, it's all about the relationships. Back up 4 months ago, it should have been all about the relationships. So.
One question I want to just kind of get either hand raised or head nods for to see if this is true for everybody. Like, as soon as things started changing so rapidly, how many of us doubled down on how much we were communicating with our clients, with our employees? Did you all see this kind of influx in reaching out and communication?
Yeah, that was one of the first things that we ended up doing. We're a small studio. There's only, 4 of us that are working there, but communication was first priority. We spent a lot of time and have continued to spend a lot of time just reaching out to clients that and seeing how they're doing. Really, more than anything, I think I've had more personal relationship conversations with our clients than I had in the past, and we always had good working relationships with our clients. But now I'm, writing to massage therapists that we work with in Santa Barbara, and saying, hey, how are things going? How's your family doing? You guys strong right now? So that communication, the relationships, as Colton was saying, all of that increased 20-fold.
I have something to piggyback on that. So in my industry, so I'm a tax CPA, so I got hit really hard with a lot of questions, the PPP loans, the EIDL loan. I mean, it's insane. And so as people were writing it, it wasn't making, the act itself didn't make much sense. So the interpretation didn't make much sense, and it just trickled down, and it scared everyone. So I, of course, had a lot of questions myself, and there was a lot of unknowns and a lot of false information. So I was anticipating something that I feel like I did, and it was a bit of a chance because it wasn't based on any data. As Dawn was mentioning, it was just sort of, it was just this gut feeling, and I was hoping that it would turn out well, was, okay, how do I get this information to all these people? Because I know they're going to have the same question, but what they ask me today will change in 3 days. So how am I going to deal with that without having 40 of the same conversations over and over, and risking somebody forgetting to call, or me not call them and it not turn out well. So I decided to, basically what I did is I stopped, I strategized, I figured out how to create a living document like a blog and communicate that to them. And that was huge because I was able then to affect, it ended up going viral, which is great. I was able to help thousands of clients and, non-clients across the US. But what was amazing, and what brings it back to relationships, is that I do have close relationships with my clients, and the trust that they automatically had was invaluable. If they didn't already trust me, what would these blogs mean? And then also, when I did talk to them, it was all just uplifting or how are you doing? How's the dog? How is everyone? They asked about my grandma because they know I love my grandma so much. And so that's been really amazing, being able to use digital presence to inform a lot of people, give good information with trust and value, and still save that time for relationships and still focus on that when you do get to have that human connection, either through Zoom or through phone calls or text. So
I like that, finding a way to make sure that the information that you're sharing with multiple people is centralized so that the actual communication that you can have with people can be more that relationship building. That's very smart.
Yeah, like if I was just talking to them and all we talked about was PPP and it was just me going crazy and them going crazy and then getting off the phone, I don't know if we'd have the best relationship. So they wouldn't feel better after they got off the phone. So
my kids are so confused right now with me saying PPP all the time. They think I'm making bad jokes all the time.
Not a directive.
Annie, I saw your hand go up there. You have something you want to piggyback off of there?
I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that we are kind of all saying. It started with Dawn about going back and thinking about what do we do first before we do. And Michelle also talked about it, and Kelly talked about it. We stop, we pause, we take a breath. And that doesn't mean get paralyzed. It means really get our mind into a place where we can recognize the reality and the perspective of what's really going on, not just externally. I was thinking about a metaphor this morning. I love the tiger and the stage. I'm going to add a pool metaphor. I was thinking about a metaphor in the shower this morning where I do my best thinking, that it's like the world is a swimming pool and we're all smartphones. And some of us got thrown into the pool. Some of us got splashed on the side of the pool, but we all are getting wet. And so now we have to dry and then put ourselves into rice. I don't know if that's what you're supposed to do or not, but so while we're sitting in a bucket of Tupperware of rice, we do have a moment where it would behoove us to take that breath and to really think about, what am I afraid of? And I actually made a list of just a couple of questions. And this is something that I've been doing in strategy sessions with my clients is, who are you really? Because businesses are people and we are our businesses. So who are you? What are your human gifts? And what do you do? So I had a client who is a female empowerment photographer, and that's how she defined herself. And then after an hour of going through this question and answer, she realized she is not just a female empowerment photographer, but she's so much more. So the first step to innovation is that perspective and really thinking about who we are, how can we do more, and why haven't we been doing it before? What are the fears that we've been thinking about and that have been blocking us on that road? And so asking all of those types of questions, who are you? Why do you do what you do? What can you do more of? Can help get you to the other side of that road and dry out your insides.
Lacey, can I piggyback on that real quick?
Yes, and then I have a question from the registration that goes well with this that I'd love to pose to Adrian.
Sweet. So Annie, I've got an actual literal example of somebody doing that in a pretty unique space. So influencers are having to really reevaluate what they're doing, some in particular. So that I was reading about one, he's a food critic, and primarily all online social media stuff. He'd go and take beautiful pictures at restaurants and things like that. And he would get sponsored from, usually not restaurants because he didn't want that bias thing. He would get sponsored by food magazines and, KitchenAid and stuff like that. So he found it. And so his whole thing was, I have great taste and I'm sassy. And that was his thing. And so when this hit and all of a sudden all the restaurants are shut down, his things literally shut down. How's he going to critique any restaurant when all the restaurants are closed? So he had to reconsider, is it really about my taste or is it about that I'm opening up a world to them? And so he shifted to where he would do little tutorials. So he wasn't like a chef himself, but he would do a tutorial. Here's a quick and easy way to chop up garlic. Here's a quick and easy way to puree cauliflower. And then, so he's doing these little brief educational things. And then he would start doing critiques on utensils. So this knife versus this knife. Because really the value he was bringing was insight and knowledge to food and food tech.
And if he's sassy, likely entertainment.
Yes. Yeah, he was able to keep his sass.
Mm-hmm. So one question that we got through the registration was this, and it was from Kathy. I've seen Kathy in here messaging a few times in the chat. So thank you, Kathy, for submitting this. What's the best way to cut through the noise of other businesses flooding into social media platforms in response to the shutdown of in-person opportunities? So if the option that we have without being in person is to go on social, how do you cut through everybody else who's doing the same thing? So I'll pose that to Adrienne, since Adrienne, social media is your field.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's the same in IRL, in real life, I guess, before before all this hit. I mean, there is a lot of noise. But as Annie said, and a bunch of everyone has kind of said already, dig into who you are and what you do, and you will become your own unique thing. Your tribe, you're kind of like your vibe attracts your tribe or whatever. That phrase is that the kids say, but it's so true. And I think that even now you have to get really, Michelle said it as well, kind of like think about who you are, get really, what's the word for it? Just be really self-aware about who you are, and then dig into it. That's probably the biggest piece of advice that I would have for social media. And just make sure everything that you do is coming from your values and your brand values, and just know that the people that want to find you will find you. And then also, I guess what we're really talking about is positioning, if we're going into marketing terms or business terms. I feel like you're going to find out really fast if you haven't positioned yourself well. If you're not talking about yourself very well. If you, Spry has done it already. We used to call ourselves a digital marketing agency, where we do all the digital marketing, all of it. And then, so when people would talk about us to their friends or their business associates or whatever, they would be like, "Oh, they do digital marketing." But we all know that digital marketing, there's a lot in that. And so then we repositioned ourselves to be social media strategists that are really great at social media. So I think that, those are kind of my two tips. Dig into your values and look at your position.
I loved seeing everybody's, as soon as you said, like, really the decisions you make are based off your values, I saw like 6 heads just, do one of these. And like, for a lot of us who are on the panels and that kind of thing, it's almost like second nature to us to know what our values are, have them identified, have them, filtered through our staff. But like a lot of businesses, likely a lot that are here, I would love to see in the chat section as we move on here, like, do you have your set core values?
Yeah.
Do your employees know them if I quizzed them on them today?
I mean, this is honestly, we were talking about it before, kind of some tough love time also, and kind of similar to what Colton was saying about relationships and your value and your values as a company. It's going to become apparent really quickly if you don't actually, if you do what you say, you know what I mean? If you say you have values, but you don't actually, abide by them or like make decisions out of them, that's going to show up really quickly, really fast right now. If you don't have good relationships and you're not, you say you do, but you really don't, that's going to just come, that's going to be very obvious really fast.
I think too that we had gone ahead, and before all of this, transparency for the last couple of years has been a big topic for companies. Be as transparent as possible, be really transparent. But I feel like with COVID and the pandemic, that is finally switched to actually being about authenticity, which to me, there's a lot more emotion involved in an authentic stance and standpoint for a company versus just being transparent. And authenticity definitely speaks to those relationships and how we're growing with our customers. And one of the things that we'll end up positioning ourselves with new clients is really trying to sell them on the idea of partnership. It's not just, you're our client and, you've hired us to do this work. We want there to be a relationship there, a partnership, because if there isn't that transparency and authenticity in our relationships, then we're not able to move forward. And I think really this period of time has really helped us to get to that point even more.
Yeah, and I would
Michelle
definitely
and then
add,
Amy.
Oh, sorry. I just want to add that I think both Aaron and Adrian, to me, are talking about being really intentional. I think that there's an intentionality that needs to go into the decision making, and that intentionality means observing the why. So if you're putting out content right now with the kind of guise of being authentic, but the only thing you're trying to do is sell when everyone is kind of in a, financial situation that's potentially shaky, that will definitely shine through, and people will, one, not like it, and two, not buy from you, which, yes, you want that, right? At the end of the day, we're all kind of scrambling to survive and make sure that, our livelihoods are safe. And I think that if that's the first, if you're moving with that intention, that's not going to get you the outcome you want. I think that the connection right now is what folks are looking for. So not just what can they do for you or why should they buy into you, but what is your company going through? How can you be transparent, as Aaron mentioned, and really clear and authentic and vulnerable to share, like, hey, here's where we're at. Here's what we can do for you. And I think that intention will ultimately get folks kind of to a place where, yes, they'll feel like we're all in this together, but also get them to stick with you when we're on the other side of this.
Yeah.
And then I saw Annie had something to say next, but one thing that I'm seeing patterning in all of us here is like, okay, we're talking about the difference between clients and partners. And don't you think that part of that difference comes when you're not just buying and selling, but when you align your values? If you're clear about what your values are and you share what your values are, then partners come alongside you because of that value alignment. And then it has nothing to do with your cash flow. It has nothing to do with trying to make money during that time. It just has to do with partnering with like-minded people who are going in the same direction you are.
The one thing I was going to just point out is that Spry specifically has done a very good job of not only thinking about and knowing what their values are, but you guys are excellent at communicating what that is specifically and clearly. Like, I think I know two off the top of my head that I could say are curious and kind. Yes. I know are two of them.
Yes, very good.
Yeah. So, it's the think, feel, act, right? That we're all talking about. We need to think and strategize and all those marketing business words with emotional intelligence. We need to feel and be transparent and not worrying about, like, if I act like this, I'll position myself correctly. We strip all of that away and just be yourself. That's actually how you position yourself. And then acting. Maybe the acting is not something that we can do the way we did before, but we certainly can communicate. And communication is 100% how we can act right now, all of us.
Lacey, I've got one last thing to add on that question about cutting through. And I think this applies to everything right now with anyone. We don't have the monopoly on creativity. People often, there's a lot of people who don't think of themselves as creative, but literally every single human on the planet is creative. If you've ever solved any problem, you're creative.
If you've ever made a sandwich, you're creative.
What'd you say? Yeah, exactly. So this is a time to really dig deep. And when you think, I want to push this out on social media, don't just do the old way. Dig deep. Accept the fact and embrace the fact that you are creative. And so what else can I come in? I may not have an agency to work with. Maybe we can't even afford that right now, but you can still be creative and take the time to really dig into something and challenge yourself. If you come up with an idea, one of the things, really designers in particular, but really anyone, you come up with the idea, the first idea, and then you say, okay, now I need to come up with 3 completely different ideas based on that one. And it forces you, because oftentimes the first idea isn't really the best one. It's the one that was most easy or the one that came most natural.
Yep.
But you have to be able to dig deep and accept the fact that you actually are creative. Embrace it.
And just one last thought on that as well, because that's a really good point. And early on when we were putting together this event, one of the things that I had mentioned that I still truly believe in the days since, I think has become stronger, is that part of this is looking for opportunity, but it's literally about turning over every rock in your yard. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a pebble or if it's a boulder. It needs to be turned over and examined as a viable option for promoting your business, building community, building relationships, and taking those chances to go ahead and step out and try something new, because we don't know, especially through social media. I mean, you think about social media, it's technically a new field. Still, even though it's been around for years, it's new in the grand scheme of things. And so you don't know what's going to trend or track or anything else. And every day people are breaking down barriers. And so don't be afraid to try something new on your business, or just to examine just what's laying around and what the opportunities are.
And the nice thing about social media is if you, sorry, Lacey, I was going to say that the nice thing about social media is that if you make something and you create it and you put it out there and you don't like it, the nice thing is that the news cycle will erase it. People will forget about it. I mean, it constantly flows. And if something isn't the best, or like you did it and you experimented, you're like, oh man, let's never do that again. Everyone, it is fine.
Okay, there are a couple comments I want to address in the chat section, and then I have a question from the registration that I want to pose towards like Colton and Kelly specifically. So a couple things that just came out of the chat section was Greg in here mentioned, I'm trying to be an information sharer with my customers. Any news in my industry, I'm sharing that out and getting more comments than ever on that kind of content. So I know that we've seen a lot of that too. I mean, Kelly, you've seen that. Adrian, you've seen that in your clients. Making sure that you have the correct factual information is obviously very important, but people are really going after that information. So I think that's important from Greg there. So the question over here that I want to just pose towards Colton and Kelly, it's kind of a broad question, but it's like, somebody asked, what is the single most important thing I can do for my business right now? And I think you two are probably in a position where you can, answer that pretty well, because you're helping a lot of people through this time. So Colton, what's the single one most important thing that we've got 67 people in here watching right now that they can do for their business during this time that we have?
I want to know this answer.
Yeah, I'm making notes.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. And obviously every business is different, right? But the one thing that we can control, and the one thing that you can control, and it's been mentioned here a lot. Actually, I'm going to mention 2 things there. Number one, you can control the content and the creativity that you have and what you say about your business or what you say about a partner or how you bring them along. You can control the content. Content was king, it still is king, and it should still be king going forward. So
queen,
content,
it's 2020.
What?
2020, it's queen. Fun.
I say queen.
There we go.
Yeah. King, queen, whatever, right? Content will continue to reign. The other thing is what's already been mentioned are relationships. Like really dig down and really hunker down on who your partners, your customers, your clients, whatever you call them, who they are, where they're at, and meet them there. And if you know who they are and what they're doing, show empathy and be authentic. We've talked about authenticity. Empathy is one of the biggest things that everybody needs right now. And if you're a sole business person, that creativity is more important today than ever before. Get creative and don't fear reaching out to others for help. So there's not one thing, but maybe three things that you can go on. Really, and I would say, if you have the expertise, put yourself out there. Be there for other people.
That's like what Michelle right now, she's like, okay, well, I've got the time, I've got the expertise right now. This is what I want. I've taken the time to pause and know that this is what I want to do. And now I can move forward in that. Kelly, right before I go to you, I really like this talk about empathy too. And Valerie mentioned that as well. And Adrian, you were talking a lot before this about seeing things from the perspective of your clients or your partners.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that for just a second? And then Kelly, I'll move to you.
I was, like Annie said, I was in the shower the other day thinking about perspective and just like, but then I was thinking about, so at Spry, for all of our social media accounts and everyone we work with, we put ourselves in their shoes and we create personas, and then we create social media that is for them. And just the act of putting yourself in other people's shoes and so, I mean, that's kind of, Colton inspired me, probably that thought, just like thinking, oh my gosh, the perspective that we really should be taking is like the people that are buying our services or, our partners or whatever they are. Like, how are they doing? Like, they have kids at home, everyone's life has changed in some way or another. And yeah, just kind of go from there. The other day I was kind of having a bad mental health day, and normally I don't talk but to my clients about it, but my partner, my client, she was just like, you know what? I got you. I'll this is fine. Like, and it's just one of those moments where it was like, professional Adrian. I'm like, oh gosh, like I'm having like a meltdown. And then they're just like, you know what? It's fine. And so just kind of like, they just putting yourself in, that didn't really have anything to do with putting yourself in other people's. But anyway, we're all having days.
It does, though. I mean, it might feel uncomfortable, but any form of leadership, when you can put your vulnerability first, then it opens up other people to allow their vulnerability to come into. So by showing your vulnerability, you're actually showing empathy and allowing them to be vulnerable as well. So there, I'll tie it up for you.
Thanks.
That's been one of my tactics, actually, is just calling clients and crying. It works really well.
Okay, Kelly, so the question to you, what is the single most important thing that you can do for your business right now?
Okay, so I've had a few minutes to think about it. So I would say that if there really was one, okay, I can't just give one, but I can give a process. So I feel like we've mentioned, figuring out your values, because they will shine throughout this entire thing. So if you didn't know what they were, or if you didn't feel aligned before, definitely taking a moment to breathe and do that. And for me, what has never failed before this, and especially during this, is coming from generosity. And so giving information, being of service, and even if that means, like for me, I'm starting something new, there's other CPAs that don't have the same model as me, and I see them struggling. And so I'm creating a program so they can do the same, do it the way that I did it, the most, what I found efficient and of service. And so that's my way of figuring out a way to give information back. And this doesn't mean and I want to make it clear what this doesn't mean. Generosity doesn't mean doing things for free. It doesn't mean to give away everything. It doesn't mean to not bill clients. It doesn't mean to not collect payment. I mean, come from a place of where you want to help as many people as possible. And you could be pretty smart stopping and thinking about, so for me, in my blog example, stopped and thought about how can I help the most people without just answering literally just the same question 150 times every 3 days over and over and over for the rest of my life about the PPP. The best way was to do a blog. It took me a fraction of the time that other CPAs are doing, and it helped thousands of people. So getting that strategy in place, but 100% it came from a place of generosity. At the bottom, there's a donation link to Meals on Wheels. It wasn't, there's a lot of CPAs that are charging for this. That felt really icky. And so it's just coming from a place of generosity has worked for me time and time again. It comes through your content and it comes through, I think, your values. So yeah, I think that would be my number one thought is asking yourself, how can I help as many people as possible? People will love you and your clients will appreciate you and your relationships will be really solid if you were to do that. I think if there was one thing, that would be one thing. Yeah.
Kind of cheated. You said the whole process.
Yeah.
No, I love
one process. One process.
Michelle, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I would just add that if your company, business, whatever you're working on is in the position to do so, something I've been seeing a lot and I've started to implement as well is if you're able to reassess and renegotiate your payment structure. So a lot of folks have been doing pay what you can. And if that is something, particularly if you're in a place to do that, because again, I'm not suggesting that we all are, but if you're in a place where you're looking to help as many people as you can, but understanding where people are at financially or your client base, potentially might be struggling a little bit more, I think that is a good thing to consider so that it puts the onus on them, but also still values your content and your services in a way that it's a reciprocal relationship.
One question we had posed here in the chat section, and I'm just going to plug those attendees who are listening right now. I would love to start getting some of your questions into the Q&A function. So if you don't know where to find that, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there is a menu and there's a function that says Q&A. You can click that and you can add a question and then I can pose that to the group. One question that came through over in the chat section is, what are you finding is the most valuable platform you use to communicate with your clients right now? So how are you making that content? Kelly is saying, she'll create a blog post and be able to direct people there. But from other panelists here too, what's the most valuable platform you use to communicate with your clients right now?
Phone.
Is it?
Well, I mean, Zoom
do you call them?
Yeah, that direct actual voice-to-voice communication or Zoom. I never used video on Zoom before because I don't like seeing my face, but now I'm doing the video chat thing because it adds to more personal. But I don't feel like there's any other form of communication that's truly directly personal. Email, Slack. We've got some clients on Slack, and that can kind of start to get there. But really, you got to hear the voice right now, in my opinion, and connect that way. It's funny, we're going all digital, but really we're saying, let's go back to the phones.
Mail too. I gave out some gifts to clients via mail. So people love that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we actually have thank you cards that we try and send out handwritten on a regular basis, just as a touch point after a project wraps. And that seems to be valuable, even though it's not a two-way communication. But I think in terms of two-way communication, Instagram has been a good one, and even Twitter, the DM process in Twitter has been good for reaching directly out to clients or having them reach back out to you.
I do a lot of just asking, like, how can I help you? How can I help you today? Like, what, generally I have goals for the week and I try to, obviously meet them. And then since all of our schedules are different, generally, I didn't give out my phone number, or there's just like a certain kind of barrier that I just would keep. But now I'm just like, here's my phone, here's text me, and just kind of however you need to. And that's kind of however they want to be contacted. I ask them that.
That's actually something I was going to piggyback off, Adrian, is for me, as the one who is responsible for maintaining relationships, I just catalog which channel my client likes to talk on. And so it's certainly not as efficient, but I've never been the queen of efficiency. So I'm fine going from Facebook message with one to texting with another to slacking with another. But, I've just increased the frequency of those touch points on whatever channel they prefer to communicate on.
Yeah. One thing I would say about social media too, just really fast, Aaron, with like social media channels and like with that sort of thing, like a public, if you have a B2C or whatever channel is the most active, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or whatever, it's nice to just have that. And then on your other channels right now, just you can put in the bio or pin to the top and just say, during these times, we're doing all of our communication over on Facebook. Go check us there. Or, right at this time, we're checking more DMs over there. So kind of like funneling people into the one channel that is, the most useful is, and that will kind of help you relax about everything, because now that everything is so chaotic, it is kind of like, I have to do all these channels, kind of funnel it into one and pick one.
What I'm finding is that I'm taking kind of like the two-prong approach of taking advantage of social media. I find the most interaction with people on Instagram and having a strategy there. And my strategy is, Lacey, I think you said it, that leadership means that you're vulnerable first. So my strategy on Instagram is to show up visibly vulnerable and then invite the one-on-one conversation. And so that it kind of hits both of those strategies. That's my process.
Okay, I've got a couple questions in the Q&A section that I want to pose. So panelists too, if you want to click that Q&A, so that you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to start with Bill's question here. So I'm going to read it out and then kind of open it up to the floor. So we don't know when the day of attending an in-person event will be back. So between now and then, what are your thoughts on engaging with people from a potential customer perspective? Back in the day, most interactions at conferences would happen in between sessions or at lunches or over a few drinks. How do you market to potential customers who are attending an online event when you don't have that in-person time?
Well, I could try to take a stab at that.
Okay.
Because we're kind of doing that here right now. I know I had a couple conversations about it, because you're right. It's frankly, conferences, I actually usually hate going to conferences myself. Once in a while, there's a good one that I enjoy, but usually I kind of hate it. And for me, it's all about the happy hour. That's actually my motif, period. Even when I'm not at a conference, it's really all about the happy hour to me. But so one of the things that I've done previously, and probably will be doing here as well, is when you're seeing the interactions and you're hearing people ask questions and things like that, and you see someone ask a question that like really vibes with you, or you see there's a synergy there, you can DM them and say, hey, I really like what you said. Can I follow up with you on an email, or would you be up to having a happy hour over Zoom? I know for me, the first happy hour we did on Zoom was with two of our friends, my wife and I. And at first we thought this is going to be really weird. And I'm a consummate nerd, but this felt even nerdy for me. And we're like, what the hell with it? Let's do it. And the first 10 minutes or so was kind of awkward. We're sitting on our couch, they're on the TV, they're doing the same. And we're like, okay, we're just staring. Like when you're having a conversation with somebody, you don't just stare at them the entire time. But that's what we're doing. But we got used to it. And now, I had there's a brewery behind my house that I'm a Mug Club member at. And a bunch of the Mug Club members, we're getting together now almost once a week to do happy hour at the same times that we used to do it at the brewery. So I think embracing that, yeah, it's kind of weird at first, but reach out to people and say, yeah, let's grab a drink after this.
Yeah, I was just having a conversation. I'm teaching a class on professional practices at Clark College this term, and we were just talking about this last night about, how do you network? How do you reach out to people during a time when in-person communication is not, person to person, it's not happening? And it really does start out with just reaching out, just send that email, just, try and connect with the person on LinkedIn, try and connect with them on Twitter, Instagram. Everybody, for the most part, wants to talk about what they're working on. So it's really a great opportunity to reach out, especially, and it doesn't matter who you reach out to. It doesn't matter how far up they are. There's a good chance that they'll answer you just because they want to talk. And so, yeah, just reach out, I think, is the best way to network at this point.
And Aaron, I love the way you posed that too, when you said everybody wants to talk about what they're doing. As somebody on social media a lot, the value in actually reading somebody's content and then asking them a follow-up question about their content, like, you compare that to, spending $1,000 on getting bots to go out and do 2 emojis as responses to people's content. All you have to do is listen to people and ask them about what they're doing, and they will connect with you. So whatever platform that is, actually turning on your listening ears to get them to talk about what they do is going to be really valuable.
Yeah.
There's a parallel to me with this that I talk about even before COVID, which is it's a lot like dating when you're engaging with your clients. And if you're on a date with someone and all you do is talk about yourself, you don't get the second date. If you ask questions and engage and show real interest in that person and listen, then you might get the second date, especially if you're funny. That works too. But at least ask questions.
I also think that for events, like event planners, their industries are just like, oh my gosh. But this event, like Rise Up, putting on events. There's going to be, maybe Lacey, we should write a blog post about this.
Yeah, we can
how to, you all, Tag, you all did excellent job having a hashtag, following the hashtag. If you're part of any of these events, keeping an eye out for people in the comments. Don't be shy of reaching out on Instagram or LinkedIn or wherever. It's just not being shy on online. It's just kind of like what you got to do and participate. So,
Colton, you put a note into the actual Q&A function. Can you verbalize that for people too, please?
For sure. Yeah, I didn't want to jump on and cut anybody off, but there's 3 things that I've looked at doing here is, I want to know prior to the conference who I want to reach. And so I'll make a note of people that I want to get in touch with, people that, I see similarities with or have things in common. So I'll do a little bit of research prior to that. And then, start an authentic conversation during it with those people. And then obviously something that Alicia said in the chat is follow-up. Like, follow-up is going to be really important. So those 3 things are the things that came to my mind when Bill asked that question.
Okay, that's great. I also, so when you're thinking about that in real practice, like right now, we have we've got 65 people technically digitally in this room, right? And in your chat function on the side here, you can message to everybody, or you can reach out and with your little drop-down window and message people individually. So if you're seeing somebody in the comments section over here in the chat section who is saying, you're like, man, I think our values might align a little bit, you can click that drop-down, send a direct message straight to them, ask for their social media channels, for their email so that you two can follow up. I would love to see that happening in here. Yes, Kelly.
I also have another note. I was just thinking, because I didn't know that now I see there's 74 participants. I didn't even know that. And old Kelly would have been totally freaking out and nervous in front of an actual crowd. And I don't have any of that anxiety. So it's now for people that don't have, or that have that, what is that called? Stage fright. This is your time, apparently.
Okay. I'm not sure if anybody will have an answer for this, but I thought it might fit well in this section. I got it in the registration, and it's interesting. So let me pull it here real quick. How do you think companies who allocate a significant marketing budget to large trade events will reinvent their strategic plans to achieve the outcomes they need in this new situation? Because there's a lot of industries that they had many events that they were planning on going at and having, booths at. And that's where they got a majority of their leads from. So what do they do now? What are they going to do?
Well, I guess
Go ahead, let's go, Michelle. Yeah.
I was just going to say that I left the company where that was happening. And I guess for me, what seemed to be how we were shifting is to really bring a lot of bring everything we've talked about in terms of the intentionality, reaching out to partners, et cetera, but bringing that online. That's really kind of the only option, at least that I can think of, unless that's someone else, but yes, hosting webinars or shifting the format. So maybe it's a few day events, which is what I was working on prior, but then maybe condensing that to have a mastermind that's a day long, kind of like this. And I really think it's about pivoting in a way to kind of bring the content that you were hoping to share in a live event, maybe more elaborate way, and really trying to find ways to incorporate that in the online environment. And like Kelly mentioned, there are a lot of pros to that, but for a lot of attendees, especially, that potentially are a little bit more reserved. But I do think that there's also obviously a lot of challenges that need to be navigated. And hopefully, Lacey, you do end up writing that blog post about how you put this on. So I do think that would be helpful for a lot of folks who don't really know how to transition.
I was going to say two things. First, I know that there's a lot of technology that goes into trade shows and booth right now. And so maybe tweaking the software that maybe you would use to collect data, maybe there's a way to adjust the function of some of that technology into a live type of a meeting, using some of those game functions, those video functions. There's so much innovation that's already in that space, thinking about it in a different way. And then I think even before that, stopping and thinking and asking the customers and the people who go to the trade shows, what do you really want? What do you really need? What's important now? How can we do that now as we're building out new innovation?
And since Zoom and video is so easy now, it's really simple to just say, I'm going to teach a class to my clients or to anyone. It's going to be an hour and a half. It's on Thursday, and send it out. You spin it up. You don't have to find an event. You don't have to do all this other stuff. So this is all about education right now. Everybody wants to consume content and learn. So, figure out a way to just, hey, yeah, I'm just going to throw a class together. It doesn't have to be fancy.
We have a client that is a manufacturer of road signs for states, and so they are completely reliant on the trade show season to build their business, and they have begun to switch and leverage YouTube as much as they can for product demos and things like that, as well as doing live streams for different types of events. So I think that even if you are, and they're a very traditional company, family owned for a couple generations, but yet they're still moving and embracing social media in order to help people to know more about their products, even though they can't be out there talking about them in person.
By the way, it sounds like I just had some panelist privilege happen, because apparently only the panelists are the ones who can direct message with other people. So I'm sorry, I don't know the best answer now to how you can connect personally.
It could be something with Zoom too, like some setting on Zoom or something as well, because I know I've been in some where you can directly do it, but
I guess you'll have to just message to everybody. If there's somebody you really like, you got to be open and say, hey, Brittany, you're saying great things. Can I follow you on Instagram?
Or go to tag Facebook page and follow it.
Mm-hmm. I'll answer questions. If you ask in Facebook Messenger in the tag page, I will find everything you need. Okay. For today.
You heard that.
You ask me tomorrow. Okay. Just a quick update. We've got another 12 to 15 minutes to go through the panel here. And then I'm going to give us like a 10-minute break in between panels, because my bio break takes a little longer than other people's, maybe. I don't know. We've got a couple more Q&A here on the Q&A function. So I'm going to read this one from Dave Marcos. Great advice about how to reconnect and rekindle customer relationships through marketing tools. What advice would you give people looking at a larger, more drastic pivot who are developing new products and trying to promote and expand opportunities for their business at this time? So if we've got companies who are looking at bigger pivots right now, what advice can we give them?
So I could talk a little bit about that.
And Colton,
I'll start
too,
it by, what's that?
And Colton too after that.
Okay, cool. I think it comes down again to digging in deep to creativity and really value innovation and creativity and try to get some fear out of the way. But I think it comes back to, again, going back to your values and saying, what is it that makes us a company? What is it that we're actually offering at the core? Not this specific offering, but what are we giving? And then looking at what is the market need? What are these guys actually asking for? And now throw whatever offerings or products you have out the window mentally. You don't need to do that with your business yet, but mentally throw them out the window and say, I have a brand new business right now. And this is my value as a company. This is the value I give. And here's my audience. How do I craft a product to meet those needs right now? And just start from scratch.
Yeah, and I'd echo that and say spot on. And Dave, great question. Go for it. You know, that's the other thing. Removing the fear and going for it, but understanding what that offering is going to be super important. And surrounding yourself with people who can help you do that. So, you know, if it's a one-man show or one-woman show, or it's a company, like go at it together or find somebody to go at it together and remove that fear and go for it. Because right now, I mean, what else is there, right? It's your effort, it's the company's effort, it's either doing it together or solo. So removing that fear and going at it is number one advice I would give for sure.
I love the idea of surrounding yourself. You know, when you talk at the beginning, Colton, about the things that you can control, that is one of the things you can control as well, right? You can control who you're collaborating with, who you're inviting into your circle, who maybe you're setting some boundaries to have them out of your circle. I'm sure all of us know that there can be one person or one group of people who end up sucking a lot of the creativity and energy from a group. And sometimes the choice isn't about doing more, it's about setting boundaries. Not from personal experience or anything. I'm fine. It's fine.
Lacey, I think you're spot on. I think that, not only having the stay-at-home order and ridding things in your home of, I didn't need this, I didn't need that. It's also like really important to evaluate your relationships right now and which relationships are going to help you move forward in this time. Which people are going to help you move forward in this time, and which people are really negative, and really just setting a good boundary for those, because it's and I'm not saying be overly positive, because this is a very negative and very hard situation that all of us are in. But it's something that if we surround ourselves with the right people, if we surround ourselves with people who are motivated to get through it and to solve challenges, there's no reason why innovation, there's no reason why, new companies, new products, new services can't be born from this challenge. And we'll see it. We'll definitely see it. And I think that there's going to be a great, giving food or buying food from restaurants really opened up my eyes to the restaurants that were being innovative and the ones that weren't. And there's a lot that weren't, but are starting to now. And I feel that with technology, we'll see a bigger gap. We'll see either a bigger gap between businesses that just couldn't get on board, and we'll see a bigger gap close between mainstream businesses and mom and pop businesses because of technology. And I think that it's all about, who you're working with, who you're surrounding yourself with, and moving forward together. So, yeah.
Okay, I saw Michelle's hand go up. Adrian, this reminds me, though, of what we were talking about yesterday at the end of our podcast about tough love. Yep. Like realizing that this is kind of going to shake off people who don't have strong roots in their community.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's okay. It's kind of icky. It has a little bit of that ickiness to it because you don't ever want to see people fail or, but what it does do is it does unearth whether people have that strong sense of community or that strong sense of innovation to be able to pivot like this. Okay, Michelle, go ahead.
That was an accidental hand raise, I guess. Sorry.
Oh, Kelly.
So I guess to piggyback off of that, off of what Colton was saying, I think that, so I'm starting something new right now as well in my industry, and something that I haven't heard of before. And I was always scared to do it. And for some reason, there's been this pull. So I bet a lot of serial entrepreneurs like me are just feeling this pull of like, oh, there was this thing I was like thinking of, and now I have this burning passion. What I would like to say to them is, when I announced it, and it was definitely what the old me would think, or pre-COVID would think, it's too early, didn't have the data, all this stuff. It feels uneasy, and that's normal. I think and this is what people have told me. And I feel like Colton was saying, I've been really surrounding myself and having my hype girls ready so that, when I'm like, I'm going to throw up right now, I'm going to throw up over this. And then they can just tell me, you're doing good, you're being generous. This will affect someone positively. And so important to have that support with you. I think that is the one thing you can control in this, is that you can have your hype crew there with you and to support you when you say, I just feel like I was vulnerability hangover, or I feel like, I'm going too far. Because I think anything right now that's innovative will feel a little too far. I really do. So sitting with that is just the reality of it. But I think it will set you apart. So
that gave me goosebumps. Anything, what did you say? Like anything really innovative will feel too far.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I think
Go ahead, Don.
Part of the surrounding yourself with other people, when I was talking about creativity and digging deep, part of that is collecting the ideas, because you only have this much perspective when you surround yourself with more people. As an example, I'm in regular communication right now with the former owner of Gravitate because he brings a certain historical perspective on the company, and he has a particular view on finances that gives me another perspective. Do we agree on things? Not necessarily. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But it's perspective that he's bringing, and I'm not going to let my hubris stop me from hearing ideas from other people.
I like that.
Okay, there's a question in here that I want to get to from Valerie, and I think let's direct it towards Michelle and then follow up on it. Valerie was asking, can you expound on generosity and charging? What does that look like in your business and other businesses? How can we be generous?
Well, I don't know. Is that for me or is that for Kelly? Because I know Kelly was talking about generosity. But
okay.
I do think that, I guess, if I had to expand on generosity and what I took from what Kelly shared, I guess the paying what you can, which is the part that I talked about, I think that to me, that just means being able, and whether there's a scale that you put within that, because you're obviously putting some boundaries, might be helpful for a particular business. But I think that, we've kind of talked about intentionality. We've talked about bravery, which is kind of what Kelly was, to me, I guess what I pulled from that is really kind of being brave and jumping into a space of the unknown. And if I tie that back to generosity, I think it really, it means kind of maybe doing some things that don't at the onset feel natural. Because I think that we have been in pre-COVID, I think we were in this kind of go, go, go pace. And I think that generosity for self and for other right now really kind of, and I talked about this earlier, but I think it means slowing down and really assessing kind of the needs of your partners, clients. I know we've used a lot of words to describe kind of the community that essentially you should be focusing and building and really kind of putting some anchors to that. And while I think it should have been important all this time, I think that people are really seeing the value of anchoring those communities from a place of generosity, from a place of face-to-face, or not face-to-face, but person-to-person, and really kind of, without getting too woo-woo on anyone, but soul-to-soul. Like, people are going through a lot right now. So really being able to kind of connect on that level, as opposed to this kind of superfluous not like kind of fake, kind of floaty space, I think people really will connect to the anchored, kind of generous, the authentic. And whether that means you have to decide for yourself what that generosity can look like, because I think that it will look different for everyone. But that doesn't mean that it will be less impactful, especially depending on the industry trend. That's what I would say.
Yeah, kind of to exactly what you're saying, Michelle. But then also, I was thinking like knowing your value, and it's a little bit scary because I remember, just sometimes I just think I don't know anything. I just do my thing and I don't know that much. Like, because we all feel like that. And part of what I do as a social media manager is I go to clients and I talk about them, and they're often like, oh, what I do isn't that great or whatever, just make me look amazing, but they don't really see their value. And so it's just kind of like recognizing your value and realizing that it's not like big, shiny, fancy things. It's just, kind of like what I was saying with the wine tasting the other day. How much does it take to like sit down and just talk for 10 minutes and give out this like free knowledge that you have inherently in your brain because they were, they're winemakers and they just have this in their brain, but they don't think it's valuable. But so many other people think it's valuable, like people don't really realize how valuable their brains are sometimes. And so I think doing that's kind of like maybe therapy would help. I don't know.
Can I just add one thing too?
Michelle, Aaron, Annie.
Sorry, just in the comments, someone wrote, "Is generosity accepting and promoting? We are all in this together." And I guess the one thing, the two quick things I want to say about that specifically is that, I don't know that there's a choice to accept it because we are. I think that we are all literally, and I was reading an article recently that was talking about the fact that, yes, like pre-COVID, there's always something that people are going through. And that's why they say you never know someone's story. You really should kind of give people the benefit of the doubt because you don't know someone's history and kind of what they're bringing to the table. But we know what everyone has on their table right now. It's really important to lead with that. And then I think promoting it, I think that depends. To me, that, maybe it's because I don't know. I'm not a salesperson, so the promotion of that feels awkward to me. But I do think that the way to do that, if I were to do that, for kind of what I'm trying to put out into the world, which is creating brave spaces, I would share from the place of vulnerability, like we've talked about. So not just promoting it, but kind of, this is where I'm at. This is where I'm at, and this is where my business is at. This is what I'm trying to kind of, this is what I bring to the table for you. So, like in this time, and how do we move from there? That's kind of how I would address that.
Okay, great. Aaron, then Annie.
Yeah, and so Michelle had made the comment about pre-COVID being go, 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 and for anybody who's has a business or is, especially like in an agency, that can easily be translated to sell, 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 and we're in the process of keeping those sales funnels full. But I think that this idea of generosity is about just reaching out with impactful messages and leaving the call to action off the end of whatever it is that you're doing. And that's not to say that you stop selling and stop generating business. But I think that there's an idea that if you are, again, being authentic and building community and building partnerships, that work is going to be a byproduct of everything that you're doing to impact that community and to share that knowledge. Everything you're putting forward out of a generous and charitable nature will hopefully turn around and become more and stronger business in the long run. So I think that for me, that's the biggest thing that's changed. Yes, sell, sell, sell before COVID, but now it's let's take a look and really try and have some impact and we all need the dollars, that's for sure. But what we also see is that a lot of these catchphrases that have come along with COVID are beginning to feel like marketing terms at this point, and that it's less about being true and altruistic and being more about trying to sell more cars or whatever else it is that these large companies are doing.
Yeah. I want to point to the chat, because if you guys aren't in chat, there's been some really great stuff that people are talking about in the chat right now. I want to talk about generosity as a function of abundance. There is no way that you can be generous without it impacting other people. We don't live in that vacuum, right? So if you have abundance and you are generous, then people will be able to see your value. Am I making sense?
Yes, because abundance was something I was going to wrap us up with too. And I'm so glad that you said it first.
So you can't be generous if you have nothing, no content on the inside. So first of all, if you're generous, it shows you have value, you have content. And if you're generous from a true, authentic place, then it also shows that you have abundance, and that attracts abundance. So that's my comment.
Okay, I'm going to prep to close up this section, but I'll try to wrap that up. One thing that I had seen, Brittany Voice said something in the chat section just a little bit ago that goes in with this too, but it really is like when everyone has this fear that they're feeling, how can they draw their attention into the moment, right? You can only really draw your attention back into the moment if you slow down the way that we've been speaking about here. If you slow down, you identify the values that you have as a person, that your brand has, that attracts your customers to your brand, and then share information as much as you can out of a place of abundance. My favorite thing I tell my kids when they're the most scared is there anything wrong right now? Now, to try to bring their presence and perspective into what's actually happening. And if there's a tiger in the room, can you ride it? Are you He-Man? Maybe you are, and that's great. But bringing all of our attention into the present moment where we're at, and identifying whether they're, what is actually attacking us. What are we actually being, I don't know, attacked isn't the right word, but I can't come up with a better one. So whatever, I'll only give myself the little applause for that one. I don't know, but we're getting close.
Anxiety, like just
yes,
general anxiety because that's what I've been going through. It's just like, wow, next week, next month, blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, all right, today, this hour, what am I doing right now? That's for me anyway. That's what I'm doing.
Lacey, I've got a real specific thing. This is going back a little bit to the generosity, because part of that question was generosity and charging. So it's generosity and getting the money from them was part of the question. On a very tactical standpoint, and maybe you should talk to Kelly one-on-one later, because I'm not the finance guy. But what we looked at when we sat down with the sales team and the leadership team, what I told them was profit is not the point right now. There needs to be just enough profit so that 3 months down the road, you're not in a worse position than you are right now. Okay. But profit is not the point. And we looked at what's the number one objectives right now for us in the short term. And number one objective for us right now is keep all of our employees, keep the engine moving forward. So we looked at that and said, here's what our hourly rate actually is internally. This is the cost of operating on an hourly basis for our producers, the people doing the actual work. Here's what we can charge above that to still be able to survive and keep moving forward. And that became our new hourly rate. So when we are bidding and estimating right now, and we're letting clients know, we're being very transparent about it. We're saying, hey, right now, our objective as a company is cash flow and keeping our employees. It's not profit. So that's what this price reflects. We are doing this essentially at cost. And that's as generous as we can be. We took an inventory. How generous can we be? In what ways can we be generous? Well, our discounts is one of the first ways, but we can't discount so much that 3 months from now, when we do finally pull through this, that we're crazy in debt and we've got contracts that we're losing money on.
Yep.
So I think examining that's a tactical thing.
All right, Kelly, close it up for us.
Okay, that's a lot of pressure, but so I just wanted to piggyback on that. And I think Dawn really hit it. So from a financial person, what I would recommend if you are coming from a place of generosity, and we're specifically not talking about knowledge, we're talking about money. If you are going to do a discount, if you're going to do anything modifying your prices, it needs to have a boundary, it has to have a strategy, and it has to have a limit. Don't just talk, because if you pick up the phone and you hear that story, and it's every person's story that they're suffering right now, you will be free, you will lose all of your employees, you'll lose your business, and that won't help the economy either. So make a boundary around it. Try to make it as fair as whatever you think is, aligned with your values, whether that's for, small, big, mid-size, whatever you want to do. But definitely put some boundaries on it and structure that in. Talk to your CPA person to see how will this affect me in the end. Back into it the way that Dawn did. I've thought of that. The other thing too is I did grants. So instead of my season's kind of wrapping up, so I did small business grants to give back to the community. Different things you can do, and if you can donate your time, but everything, regardless, even my blogs had a limit. And they had a structure behind it. So set your boundaries and make them really clear, especially if you're talking about discounting or giving away any sort of free or, limited time. And even with Dawn, I would say, you obviously should hopefully have like an end goal in mind of when your prices will go back to normal and whatever measurement that would be. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. Great job, everybody. It is bio break time. So our first panel here, that's all that we get to hear from this wonderful first panel. But for the rest of the attendees that are here, we have our second and third panel that are getting queued up. So I'm getting the clap, clap, claps. Okay. So good job, everybody. We're so grateful for all of the panelists' time. Let's go ahead and take about a 5-minute break. And then we will bring on the next speaker and set of panelists, okay?